Shocker Gamer here. So today we're taking a look at the PlayStation VR aim controller and Farpoint bundle. So this was recently released and it's basically got the PS aim controller as well as the Farpoint game for PlayStation VR. So first let's take a look at this packaging. So this is the front of the box here. You can see it's advertising both the gun as well as the game bundled in together. And of course this is the front of the packaging. It's got this guy holding the gun with a VR headset on. And of course it does remind you here that you'll need both the VR headset as well as the camera to use this gun, as it uses the camera for tracking. Just the front, the sides are pretty plain. It just sort of shows the VR aim, gives you a little bit of a detailed description there. Same sort of thing with the other side, except it shows Farpoint with some screenshots. On the back of the box it shows a little bit more information for both the game and the gun. Over this side, it sort of gives you the sort of overview of the features of the PS VR aim. On this side, it shows you a bit more about the game. Some screenshots there as well. Going into contents, you of course get a manual, and this manual is very basic. It just goes through the basic of how to pair the controller, what the buttons are, etc. So, very basic just to get you up and running. Of course, it also comes with the Farpoint game as well. And finally, you get the main attraction, the PS VR aim gun. So now let's go into some features of the PS VR aim controller. So first up, you can see it looks like a very basic shape of a rifle. This is because, you know, when you're in VR, you don't really need the gun to look that fantastic because you're in VR, and you'll be seeing whatever the gun looks like in the game. So this thing doesn't need to be looked realistically like a lot of rifle controllers generally do. It just has to have this very resemblance of a shape of a rifle. That way it's more comfortable to hold, it's more simple, because remember, you're using this without looking at it. You're in the VR headset, you're not looking at the controller at all, so it has to be simple so that when you use it, you kind of just instantly know where everything is, and if you don't, you can feel it very clearly. So that's why it's shaped like it is. It's just shaped for the bare minimum to look like a rifle, to feel right as a rifle, but to work better and be more comfortable for you while you're playing in VR. So first, let's have a look at some features. So the gun itself is very nice shape. When you hold it, you generally hold it in the front as well as the back, and you can do it either way with your right or left hands. Whatever, if you're right or left-handed, no problem. You can hold it either way. Now this thing does need the PlayStation camera just like the PSVR does. It tracks it using, of course, the ball on the end here. This one will light up colored. And it also has motion sensors in it, so it gives you a one-to-one. So when you tilt the gun or when you move it, it's going to reflect that in the game. So you feel much more immersed. Now going into the controls, on the front here, you've got share and option buttons. Share, and on the other side you can see there's an options. You've got your analog stick, which also clicks down. You've got your D-pad. On the front you've got L1 and L2. Going to the back here, you've got your main trigger. Above that, you've got R1 on this side. You've also got R1 on the other side. And this is so if you hold it right or left-handed, you've got an R1 button either side, so you can access it really easily. On the top here, you've got the touchpad button, and you've got the PlayStation button as well. On the back, you've got another analog stick, which also clicks down. And of course, you've got the face buttons, triangle, circle, X, and square. And these are shaped like this, so they're really easy when you're holding it. You can really easy grab which one you want when you use an analog stick. Now, to use this when you're playing the game, and for this instant Farpoint, you're basically just using it like a realistic gun. you're aiming where you want to aim, and of course you've got the VR headset on, so you can look separately to where you're aiming. So you can be looking one way while you're aiming another way. And on the upside of that is that you can aim naturally. So when you're actually aiming, you're aiming. So if you're not really good at aiming, you might have trouble shooting things in this game. So wherever you look and wherever you're aiming the gun, that is where you're going to shoot. So it's not about trying to like auto-aim or anything like that. You aim the gun and you point and you pull the trigger and you shoot whatever you're shooting. Now in Farpoint, you use the analog stick down the bottom here to move. So you'd move basically naturally. There are different movement options if you have problems with moving in VR, so you can configure that the way you like. But in general, most people are probably going to just be free move, so you just use this to free move and you press down the stick to run. Yes, you can run in this game. So you just use that generally. The front buttons here are generally used for your weapons. This one's usually a scan, like to scan data fragments. And the bottom one here has uses like an alternate fire, like grenades or rockets for your weapons. Now, of course, you use the trigger to shoot and fire in the game. And the back here, depending on how your settings are, you may want to use this to actually move around left and right, so like you're strafing, so you can actually physically turn instead of just looking where you want. This may not be for everyone, because some people do get motion sick when they turn in VR or anything like that. So this is really only for the players that want it. For me, I enjoyed the shooter, so I really wanted the freedom of movement. And so I made sure I turn it on in the settings, because it is turned off by default. So if you do want to actually turn in the game and be able to move around quite freely, not just move like forward and back, you actually want to turn, then make sure you enable that for this analog stick in the game. Now, of course, you've got these other buttons here, you know, X, triangle, square, and circle, and they can also be used in the game. And of course, you can configure some controls up to a point. And again, it comes down to what other games come up in the future for PSVR. You'll be able to use these for different things. Now, in the game itself, when you're using this, it actually feels really natural. So it works really well. I mean, if you tilt the gun in the game gun tilts just like you are in real life. So it is reflective one-to-one of your movements. So when you're aiming, when you're turning, it does the exact same thing. And it's actually pretty cool as well, because when you're actually aiming in the game, you can pull this gun right up to your face and almost look through the sights on the in-game gun, and a little holographic display comes up. It looks really awesome. So aiming is actually pretty accurate. It feels really good. This thing also has a vibration function built into it, so just like a DualShock 4. So that's also there for games that support it. And so it's pretty much got everything a DualShock 4 has, except it's also got the motion sensor and the light bar tracking, specially designed to make it more accurate as a gun. So it's pretty cool. So how does this PSVR aim controller work with Farpoint? It works incredibly well. You can tell they've taken the time to design this game around this controller and make sure it all works perfectly together. Especially since this is the first big first-person shooter we've gotten on PlayStation VR. I've been wanting a first-person shooter since VR first came out. I mean, I think it's a brilliant way of experience a first-person shooter firsthand, like you feel that you're there, you feel like you're shooting and moving through this world. Well, Farpoint is very similar to that. It was thoroughly enjoyable. Now, this game is maybe only 5 to 6 hours long. You could probably go through it quicker if you just want to blast through, but I took my time. I walked through, I was looking at the environments, enjoying my surroundings, fighting the enemies, and I know a lot of you don't like the enemies in the first part of this game, the spiders, so you probably won't like this gameplay I'm going to be showing in a moment if you don't like spiders. But there are other enemies in the game, so don't worry, it's not all spiders. There are spiders in the beginning of the game, quite a few different types, including some very large spiders, but in general, there are other enemies, so don't worry too much about that. If you don't like spiders, you may not like this game too much, because there are spiders that kind of move around you, really large ones, and small ones that kind of jump at your face. So if you don't like spiders, you may not like this game. But I thought it was a cool game, interesting little story to it, very cool kind of gameplay, shooting things. The shooting felt so good. You're moving around and you're shooting enemies, and they have made a little bit of allowances. So in the game, when you're actually shooting enemies, you'll have the enemies actually run back in front of you. So say a spider jumps to you, you move to one side, it actually goes behind you instead of forcing you to look behind you and shoot and trying to have that awkward moment of trying to turn around, either with the stick or in real life, they've actually made the enemies run back in front of you. So the enemies will always run it back in front of you so that you can shoot them easily. Now, I eventually used the back analog stick to move and turn because I found it much more accurate, because then you can turn to face your enemies and you don't have to turn as much in real life. Now, it's pretty enjoyable when you're doing this, and even when the enemies run in front of you, it does make it a little bit easier, but it doesn't make the game all that easier. There's still enemies that come at you, and if you don't reload at the right time, or if you get stuck against a corner or a wall or something, then you're probably going to die. And the way they kill you in this game is your screen will go slightly red, so you know you're almost there, and they will just kill you. Something will come up and the screen will go red, and I'll go back to the Farpoint logo and load you back into your last checkpoint. But overall, it's a pretty cool experience. You get to fight an array of different enemies. I won't spoil what type of enemies, but you do get more than just spiders, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Now, another thing in this game, when you're going through, you can actually switch your weapons, and you switch your weapons by putting the gun behind your back. So you put your gun behind your back, pull it forward, and you've switched weapons. You can also use the button. I think it was like circle or something. You use one of the face buttons to actually change, but you don't have to do that. You can just put it behind your back, and it feels so good, so satisfying to do that. Now, with most VR games that I've played in the past, when I've played, I usually play for maybe an hour or two and then have a break. With this game, I was compelled to play it. I played it in one day, one sitting. I had like one small break in between. I played for about 3 hours, had a break, and then played the rest of the game after that. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was such a cool game. I really liked the shooting mechanics on it. And I actually played it standing. Now, you don't have to play it standing. You can sit and play this game. And normally VR games I would do. I actually tried sitting and playing it, and then I tried it standing, and I found the standing, it was just so much more immersive to stand and fire this gun, because then you can really have the freedom of movement. You can move around quite freely and shoot very easily. Standing does get more tiring, but it's completely optional. So if you feel like you want to stand and play this game, you can do. Otherwise, you can just sit down and play it as normal and use the gun just fine. And of course, with Farpoint, you do get some very chaotic moments. So you get to some areas in the game where there's just so many enemies around you, and you are shooting and shooting and shooting to try and survive. So I'll show you a quick gameplay segment here with audio, so you can kind of get a feel for some of the chaos. So overall, this is a great package. I thoroughly enjoyed the Farpoint game. The gun controller works amazingly. It was such an immersive experience playing this game. Wherever you're kind of aiming, you're shooting enemies that jump at you and everything like that. You're on a different planet. You can look around at the scenery and everything like that. I thoroughly enjoyed this game. So I would highly recommend this to anyone that wants a really good game for PlayStation VR. Now, like I mentioned before, if you don't like spiders, you may not like this game, because it's a good portion of the beginning part of the game that you are shooting a bunch of different size spiders, including some very large ones and some quite big ones that jump at your face. So if you don't like spiders, you may hesitate to play this game, but if you can get past that, I would recommend this as a pretty cool game. It's really enjoyable. I enjoyed playing through the whole thing, and this gun is pretty amazing. Now, currently, Farpoint is the only really big game that is supporting this PS AIM. There are some small store games from PlayStation Store that are supporting it, and we'll be getting updates down the track to support it, but there's nothing else really big. So I hope that there's a whole bunch of first-person shooters developers are making to take advantage of this gun, as I'm really looking forward to playing more shooters with this gun, as it felt so good. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is this gun, it does not come with a charged cable. So for those of you who get this and wonder why it doesn't have a micro USB, it doesn't include it. You just have to use your one that for your DualShock 4, or if you've got any other micro USB cable, you can use that. I guess they figured that most people, if they have a DualShock 4, you would have a cable already, so it doesn't include an extra cable, unfortunately. Now, another thing, you can buy this bundle, which is the gun and Farpoint, or you can buy Farpoint on its own, which seems a bit weird because you basically need this gun to play Farpoint, because it's the best way to play Farpoint. So I don't understand why they made the Farpoint on its own when the ideal experience with it is with the gun. So if you're looking to get Farpoint, I would suggest go for this bundle, get the gun, get Farpoint. It's not that much more than just buying Farpoint on its own, so it's much more worthwhile to get the one with the gun. As this gun, it may look kind of strange, sort of like the PlayStation Move controls with the kind of ball on the end of it, but it works so well, and it doesn't matter what it looks like in VR, because when you're playing this game and you're walking around doing it, you're not seeing this, you're seeing the gun in the game. So you're actually seeing the 3D model of the gun that you're using, and it feels like you're using that particular gun. You forget completely that this is what the actual gun you're holding in real life looks like. So in that regard, it doesn't matter what it looks like, and you're just enjoying it in VR. And this is a really enjoyable experience. And like I said, I don't have any motion sickness or anything. Now, there are comfort settings in the options of Farpoint, so if you have trouble with VR, you can change how you can move. You don't have to look and turn. You can sit down, you don't have to stand like I did. There's a whole different lines of options to do to suit your preference. But I would highly recommend this game. It was so enjoyable. So far, this is one of the best PlayStation VR games I've played, and probably the one I've played the most, like, in a row. Like I said, I usually have breaks with VR games, but this one I just kept playing. I enjoyed it so much, I just kept playing and playing. And as I got to some newer sections of the game, and I got new enemies and new weapons, it was just so cool, and I really enjoyed it. Please, developers, make some more first-person shooters that support this PS AIM gun, and make them sort of like Farpoint, because the way they've done it, they've really... You can tell they're taking the time to make sure that this controller works very well with their game, and then it's a nice, smooth, really good feeling experience in VR. Because really, if you had this game and it wasn't in VR, you wouldn't think much about it. You know, if you had Farpoint, it was just a standard game, didn't need VR, then you would play this game and you'd be like, that's a pretty average shooter. But because it's in VR, because you feel like you're there, because you're using a gun and it's got that kind of one-to-one motion tracking, you feel like you're in the game, you feel like you're going through this experience this character's going through. It just makes it so much more compelling, and it's so much more immersive, that this is what sells it. This is what makes this game amazing in VR. If it wasn't in VR, it probably wouldn't be, but because it is a VR game, because it is a first-person shooter, because you do feel so immersed, it is a really cool game. And for those of you who are hesitant, don't be. It is awesome. If you like first-person shooters and you like PlayStation VR, then absolutely this is a cool game, and I would highly recommend you get it. And of course, if you get this and you got the gun, hopefully when Sony or other developers make some more first-person shooters, you already have the gun. So all you have to do is buy the games, and you can then start playing. So yeah, guys, great game, great controller. Really enjoyed this. We're really looking forward to what comes out in the future that supports PSVR aim. I hope it's some good stuff. But yeah guys, that was the PlayStation VR aim controller and the Farpoint bundle. Thanks for watching guys. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm Sharky Gamer. Thanks for watching guys. See you in the next video.